Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Scenes, a podcast where we talk about the intersection of art, culture, and big ideas. I'm your host, Sean Malone, the creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education and creator of the Out of Frame video essay series on YouTube. Here with me in studio, as per usual, is Paul Nelson, head of social media for FEE, and of course, Jen Maffasanti, communications director for the Libertas Institute in Utah. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Jen, how's Libertas treating you?
It's good. The weather is gloomy and cold, but other than that, it's great.
You know,
Great.
it's hot. It's wildly hot.
It's
Atlanta.
steamy.
We had
It is literally 55 degrees today. I'm wearing a sweater.
There's a thing about Atlanta. Not that we should go on like this whole tangent about weather, because that's the most interesting thing anybody could ever talk about. But Atlanta, as I think all of you can acknowledge, has some of the greatest thunderstorms in the world. They are phenomenal. They are awesome thunderstorms, lightning everywhere, torrential downpours. I love them. I find them to be really, really enjoyable. I was promised 2 solid days of this week. I barely got a half a day. And I'm kind of miffed.
Where's your thunderstorms?
I'm kind of miffed about it, to be honest. Like, I was like, my wife came to, she's like, oh, we're going to get 2 solid days. And I'm like, ooh, that's going to be fun. Nope.
And then only half a day. So disrespectful.
And then it got sunny and hot and it's humid again. I will say, because of the humidity, I literally watched lightning emerge from a partly cloudy sky the other day. It was bright sunlight here in where I live in Villa Rica. A little like, I don't know what kind of cloud it is. The cumulonimbus ones, the ones that are kind of fluffy, that kind of like puffy cloud. I don't remember exactly.
Oh, that's just cumulus.
Okay. Well, I don't remember I don't remember all my cloud types. You're going to have to forgive me. It's been
I have
30
young sons. I've got
years or
you.
whatever.
It's fine.
But anyway, a few clouds in the sky, not a whole lot. Otherwise, totally blue, very, very sunny. And I'm just standing on the front porch of my house and just zap. I'm like, what? Right out of what appeared to me to be blue sky. And that is what we get for the level of humidity I think Atlanta has been dealing with.
Yep.
So that's a little terrifying.
A literal bolt from the blue.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, anyway, sorry about the coldness that you're dealing with. But I also think you're, we're not that far off from the beginning of Utah's winter.
That's true.
Not that far off.
I mean, it's mid-August. It's practically Halloween. So
That's what I'm
next week
saying.
is Christmas, I'm pretty sure.
That's how it works nowadays.
That is how it works. Yep. Anyway, I've heard that you're looking for new people at Libertas.
Yeah. We, as an organization, hit our 10th anniversary and just had this enormous growth spurt, apparently, as 10-year-olds do. And so, yeah, I am hiring a social media manager right now. We're also still accepting applications for policy analyst positions. So if anybody listening is interested in that at all, you can go to libertas.org, go to the About section, go to career opportunities, employment opportunities, and all the information is there. So
Nice. I suppose I should also address the fact that I'm wearing glasses for the first time, like ever, pretty much. Certainly on anything that I've appeared on screen. I'm not a glasses wearing person in general until like the last few weeks actually, but it's kind of been an interesting experience for me. I don't technically need them. I don't know. Technically, seems like I'm splitting hairs here. I really don't need them, flat out. But they've been really nice to like reduce a little bit of eye strain. And I know you guys both wear glasses and have pretty much always worn glasses, so this is kind of a new experience for me.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Yep.
I had this is, I was going to say it was a humble brag, but I think it's just purely a brag. I don't think there's any humility involved. But when I went to the eye doctor, because just I was having some headaches periodically, and I thought, well, maybe I just have too much eye strain. I obviously spend an awful lot of my day staring at a computer, so there's that, 12 to 16 hours typically looking at screens of some kind, on a daily basis. And so I was like, yeah, maybe I should, go in and see if I'm straining too much or whatever. And the guy, puts up the smallest line of text, and he's like, oh, can you, like, he's very, very, like, I don't know how to describe it, like almost apologetic about it. Like, look, this, you may not be able to, and it's okay if you can't, but like, do you think you could read those letters? And I'm like, yeah, that's, ACTOPX. And then he'd be like, oh, okay, all right. And then he put up another line of really small letters. I'm like, yeah, that's YZXACF, and then he'd be like, well, okay then. So then he started like experimenting with glasses. The only thing that really changed was that it went from being this like low grade, mild blur at that distance. Like it kind of proved the point to me, which is that like I am straining a little bit, but it's the tiniest amount. Like it's not enough for me to be squinting or like really trying to like screw up my face to try to like figure out what I'm missing. But that actually like, it made me kind of realize that there was something there, because when he put whatever he did, and I couldn't even really tell you what my prescription is or what it means or whatever, but like it just sharpened everything up like in a tremendous way. I still apparently have 20/20 vision, which I did not expect. I fully expected to be, much worse than that at this stage. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, I don't know, man. It's been interesting. So I got the blue light blocking. I don't know. Did the whole thing. So here we are.
Yeah.
Now I'm somebody who wears glasses periodically. Wore them on my way in. Driving with them on.
Look at you.
Which was nice. I don't know. Here we are. But that is not what we're here to talk about today. What we're here to talk about is a ludicrously, and I think I mean that literally, a ludicrously violent movie. The Suicide Squad. Written and directed by James Gunn. Starring Idris Elba, John Cena, Margot Robbie, all the greats, as we know.
It was nice to see John Cena in this role.
It was actually nice to see John Cena.
I was expecting not to be able to see him.
Really? Why? You thought that he was just going to be gone immediately?
His whole catchphrase.
Oh.
Can't see me.
Oh. Yeah. Sorry.
I'll see myself out.
Sorry. Yeah, that was on me. That was on me. You set it up. I missed it. Totally right. Look, all right. Suicide Squad it's a weird movie in a lot of ways. Maybe not least of which because, like David Ayer's Suicide Squad, not to be confused with The Suicide Squad.
Big difference.
Big difference. Literally was just like 2 years ago. Well, I mean, I think had the pandemic not blown things apart a little bit, it would have really only been a two-year gap between the release, because it was 2016. I'm pretty sure that they announced that they were doing this movie in 2017, maybe early 2018. Announced that they were gonna be doing this movie. It's a very short gap in between the two, and now here we are, 2021 release. But it's a very, very short time period between, and it's not even it's not a reboot. I mean, it's a continuation, more or less, of that movie. It doesn't. I guess one of the good things about the premise is that you don't really need a lot of continuity. Like, it's different missions. Amanda Waller, who is the head of, in this, I guess she's the head of Argus, which is a government agency that deals with the government's relationship with superpowered individuals. But in the comics, she's usually the head of Argus, or maybe she's the head of a private organization called Project Cadmus. It depends. But Viola Davis plays her, I think, phenomenally. I think Viola Davis does a wonderful job as Amanda Waller. And she's always done that. It's been kind of a weird, I think DC's casting has always been pretty good, but their execution quite a lot of the time has been really terrible, which is always kind of a shame, because you get somebody like Viola Davis to play in this role, and then you put her in a trash movie. But this was sort of a do-over in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It was an opportunity to kind of reset and maybe find what was good about the premise and what was good about the idea of doing a Suicide Squad movie to begin with. And I don't know, for me, mostly worked to that end. I was generally a fan. Not my top 10 or anything, but I think it's pretty solid effort. I don't know. What are your guys' initial thoughts?
I don't think I'm quite a big enough DC fan to fully appreciate this movie, as probably you could. But it was entertaining. It was funny. It was absurd in all of the right places. It was really well cast, and I got to look at Idris Elba for 2 hours. It's great.
Yeah, you did.
So you're saying you're not well versed in Polka Dot Man?
No, I am not that familiar with Polka Dot Man. Sorry.
So look, I will say I'm not that familiar with Polka Dot Man either. However, I will say, so I used to be, it doesn't really exist anymore, tragically, but there used to be a magazine called Wizard, which was a comics industry magazine primarily, but it was for readers. I mean, it was for fans, for fans of comics. And it was a great magazine. It was thick, full color, like had interviews with comic book artists. It had a how to draw section, which I always loved, where they would do 3-4 page like drawing tutorials on how to create metal that looks shiny in your artwork, or how to create energy effects in your drawing, or whatever. But one of the sections that they always had, which was one of my all-time favorites, I think about it all the time, was called the Mort of the Month, which was just the dumbest character they could find from the back catalog of DC, Marvel, whoever, it didn't matter. But they would find guys like Polka Dot Man, and they would do a profile like you would think of like like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition profile. It had the stats. It had a little interview with sort of like, this is what the character likes and dislikes are, that kind of stuff. Notable achievements, if there were any. There never were, because they were,
not available.
Basically, like appeared in Flash 217 and got immediately killed by a falling rock or something like that. Like, they would be that kind of character. And so you'd see guys like Polka Dot Man, but it's perfect for Suicide Squad, because that's what you need. You need guys like that who are just obscure. Weasel. Oh my gosh. Weasel.
He's a weasel.
It's a weasel. It's about the size of a man. Unclear. Also that line, Joel Kinnaman's Rick Flag in there. It's like, oh, he's harmless. Well, I mean, he's killed 27 children, but I mean, relatively harmless. Like, just like stuff like that. Just for me, that played really well in this movie. And leaning into that weirdness is something that obviously James Gunn does very, very well. So I enjoyed it. I don't know, Paul, what were your initial reactions?
Yeah, so we've talked about my dislike for superhero movies before, and I haven't seen the original Suicide Squad. I don't care to see it.
You don't need to either.
I don't.
It wouldn't help your understanding of this story at all.
I haven't seen the Harley Quinn movie. I just they're usually just not very good. And we're seeing that with Marvel this year. But so going into this movie with that expectation, I was pleasantly surprised. And it turned out to be actually good and entertaining and funny, and it subverted my expectations in the right way.
I would agree with that as well. Yeah.
So my overall, I mean, it was. We'll get into some of the details, but it was fun.
We'll have to get into some spoilers in this movie. It's a weird one, because it's, in a way, it's hard to spoil because it's a very simple movie in general, and I don't think that any aspect of it should be terribly surprising to anybody. Especially if you've seen the trailer, you know that Starro the Conqueror, the giant starfish thing, is in the movie. If you've seen any of the interviews, you know that that's kind of where it ends up. if you're aware of Suicide Squad or anything surrounding it, or if you watch the Batman the animated series, right? Like if you watched any of that stuff, you would know that Amanda Waller is not to be trusted and a horrible person. So none of that should be a surprise to anybody. But I think we'll get into more spoilers in a little bit. But I will say, to the point of subverting expectations, I will spoil the David Ayer Suicide Squad movie, because that movie, I mean, everybody has litigated this to death. I mean, it was a horrible movie in so many ways. And frankly, I feel bad for David Ayer mostly because it wasn't really his fault. He was given about 6 weeks to write the script. He came out with something that he claims he was fairly happy with, but then the studio started tweaking it and messing with it. And then they brought in a trailer house to come in and literally do a second cut of the movie. That's when you started seeing the like really muted gray of the promo turn into this like really brightly colored neon stuff. Like this is in that space where they're recutting and retooling. And then they ended up, I believe they ended up with a sort of a Frankenstein cut of the original David Ayer cut coupled with the Trailer Park movie trailer studio cut merged together into one movie. I mean, I can't think of a worse way to make a movie. And so I don't totally blame David Ayer, but what you ended up with was something that could not possibly subvert your expectation. Oh, at least, I mean, it could only in the sense of how terrible it was, really, because there was nothing left other than cliches and beats that you could predict a mile and a half away. And then it ended on the thing that has just become the running joke of comic book movies, the blue light to the sky, right? Sky beam. And it was just, it was already too old to do it when 2016 rolled around. But I actually love that this movie didn't take anything sort of approaching that direction. And not only that, like, you had a big problem in the first movie where all of the characters in the first movie, you had Killer Croc, Harley, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot. None of these are really superpowered. You could argue that Killer Croc is, he's superhuman, but he doesn't shoot laser beams out of his eye. He's just a strong crocodile guy, basically.
Just a strong crocodile guy.
That's it.
Just your average crocodile man.
Your average crocodile man. Yes. But look, here's the thing. Like, they went up against a witch who was being inhabited. Her body was inhabited by some kind of a god. And also, Amanda Waller, at the very beginning of that movie, Amanda Waller is at dinner with some political bigwigs, and she's like, well, what if Superman decides to go rogue? You're going to need a team that can stop Superman. Yeah, this ain't that team. Crocodile Man, as tough in human terms as he is, Superman goes rogue. What's Crocodile Man going to do? What's Captain Boomerang going to do? Right? What's Harley Quinn and a baseball bat going to do? Literally nothing. The funny thing is Deadshot was probably the most effective against Superman theoretically, because he could have at least gotten a kryptonite bullet or something like that, and done, which ended up being how he set up Idris Elba's character, that he put Superman in the ICU or whatever because of a similar kind of situation. Anyway, it was just the premise on down. That first Suicide Squad movie just failed on every single level. You can't pit these characters against a god or a dark side or a Superman, or you can't. But a weird giant starfish, yeah, you kind of can.
Yeah, who knew?
And they do, and it works.
Yeah.
It's weird, but it works. Yeah. Also, I got to say, for me personally, I'm a huge fan of King Shark. When they brought King Shark into an episode of The Flash on the CW, and I knew it was coming, and my wife can attest to this. I would not shut up about it for like a week. I'm like, oh my God, it's King Shark. They're going to do King Shark on the show. I don't know how they're going to do King Shark on this show. They did it better here, for sure.
Voiced by Sylvester Stallone, by the way.
Voiced by Sylvester Stallone, indeed.
Pulled out all the stops.
Yeah, I mean, they're buddies. For whatever reason, James Gunn and Sylvester Stallone are good buddies.
Yeah.
And he'll probably make, I'm certain that Stallone's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as well, because he was a character in Guardians 2 as well. But yeah, I don't know.
So the movie, well, the reason why I said it subverts your expectations is that this is heavy spoilers, but I'm just going to get into it. The first 10 minutes sets up a Suicide Squad getting ready for a mission, and you think, okay, this is who we're going to be following. Mm-hmm. Kind of a weird cast of characters. Got to go storm a beach, and they do. And Pete Davidson's part of it, which I let out an audible groan. I did not sign up for this. And thankfully, he got shot right in the face.
In a very Pete Davidson way, too,
yes.
I got to say. Like, if you don't like Pete Davidson, and I'm in that camp, like, the fact that he was so dumb and then betrayed the team and then immediately got his face shot off. That's fairly satisfying.
So you build up this team in 10 to 15 minutes very, very quickly, and it's surprisingly well done.
Oh, it's effective.
And then they all get killed, except for Rick Flag and Harley, which, I mean, when she's not going to die.
Right.
They have to make another movie. But it sets up, then it goes to the other team with...
Yeah, I know. Well, you haven't been introduced to it all. They're just coming up on the beach right at that moment. Yeah.
It's John Cena and Idris Elba and a shark dude.
And a girl who catches rats.
And away we go. Yeah.
No, that I thought was great. It also really, really reinforced the failure of the first iteration of this because, I mean, this is pretty widely known at this point. Like, one of the really terrible things about that movie was the character introductions, because it felt like a movie trailer. It was the stuff that really, really made it feel like a trailer company set it up, because they literally put text on screen telling you who everybody was, what they're like, all of the stuff I was talking about, like More to the Month, but on screen in a movie, which is a terrible way to do things. But probably worse than that for me, they also scored all of that stuff with music that was meant to be a reflection of the characters that they were introducing. So when Harley came on, it's, You Don't Own Me and stuff like that. And you're just like, oh, and then right at the beginning when they're introducing Belle Reve Prison, they had Born on the Bayou and stuff like that. Oh, because it's in Louisiana. So we have to you know what I mean?
Have it really on the nose.
They were so on the nose, but they were also so short because they had to introduce, 6 or 7 characters or whatever, all in 2 minutes or whatever. So they're just this terrible jukebox of grotesque neon colors and bad music, just one right after the next. And the Suicide Squad, James Gunn managed to, first of all, focus it in on Savant, which was Michael Rooker's character at the beginning, which was great. We all know they're close friends. He loves Michael. I love Michael Rooker. Michael Rooker is a great actor, and Savant ends up being the audience's view into everything else, because we meet him. He's the one we primarily follow when they get onto the beach. He does a little bit of exposition for some of these characters, but in a funny way. So when Amanda Waller introduces Deadshot, or so we're into this problem now. Bloodsport's Idris Elba's character's backstory. Then she says literally the same thing for Peacemaker, because they have literally the same backstory. And so that's funny enough on its own, but then made better by the fact that Idris Elba is he does, it's
the same thing
the same thing I do. And he's like, yeah, well, I do it better. It's how do you do it better?
Yeah. Another big surprise for me was Idris Elba and John Cena's chemistry. I was not expecting that.
Real good.
John
Yeah,
Cena
they
is
played really well off of each other.
John Cena really does a deadpan, serious. I piece through murdering men, women, and children, and he says it as straight as it could be.
Yeah.
And it works. It surprisingly works. I don't understand how it works, because you look at him, he looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because he has a toilet on his head.
That costume is insane. I don't know. Man, I got to look this up, actually. I've got Peacemaker wiki up here, and I didn't bother to look at who the original artist was, but I'm gonna look that up.
Well, whatever they were thinking,
My
it was not great.
My favorite part of Peacemaker's costume was the white dove on the chest that
Right?
just gets progressively more and more splattered with blood as we get through the movie. It's just perfect.
And they're going. So we come back to the real squad, the real Suicide Squad, and they go off script and to go rescue Rick Flag,
Yeah.
who was captured by, they think, the bad guys.
Yeah.
So then they just go through and absolutely wipe out this entire camp. Turns out they're actually the rebels, the good part of the good guys, and
Cluster.
It's-
right off the bat.
and
Just
it's just
Yeah.
but the whole scene it sets up that Idris Elba and John Cena's characters are extremely dangerous, extremely skilled, but
also have a
funny.
different outlook on
Right.
what they're doing
Right.
and different motivations for what they're doing.
So it's this we've talked a lot about not telling, showing, and that scene was perfect.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know where these two guys are, what they can do, why they do what they do, and it really sets up the rest of the movie in 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
I think one of James Gunn's strengths. I mean, he's got a lot as a filmmaker and as a writer, but one of my favorite things about pretty much everything that I've ever seen him direct from Slither on, which was by the way, my recommendation for this past week's email. If you're not on the email list, by the way, join our Out of Frame email list. You totally should. I think it's fee.org/OOF-newsletter. But anyway, my recommendation was Slither, which is James Gunn's first film, first directorial debut, I guess I would say. James Gunn has always done an incredible job of navigating ensembles, but in particular, really weird ensembles, and balancing that tone super well. And so I think in a case like this, like you have two guys who are doing things that are so absurd, like on the surface, like if you thought about them for 10 seconds, they don't make any sense, right? Like Cena's going around using blowgun darts to kill people, and the thing with the hatchet, just
right.
like stuff like that just it shouldn't work, except for I think if you have a really good command of that. I think the way that I would say it is that like Gunn really understands that the characters are ridiculous, but he always takes the characters seriously. And I think that the way that he directs takes the characters seriously. And I think you can see this in stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy, or actually if you go back to something like Super, for example, like Rainn Wilson and Ellen Page in Super are both insane. Like they are completely insane. Like Rainn Wilson is not a well person in that movie, but the character, the way that he's presented and the way that the movie presents him is not as a joke or as a wink. This is a real person who really believes what he believes. He's a lunatic. And I think you see that too with things like Polka Dot Man, where Polka Dot Man is intrinsically like a joke of a character. Like what a dumb idea for a character. But then you go, okay, well, this is a guy who was like experimented on by his mother, and now like all of the mother,
Right.
like just psychosis is embedded in the character. That actually turned out to work extremely well, and also was super funny at the same time. Mm-hmm. It gave him like, you understand him, you empathize with him a little bit, but also you go, yeah, this is hilarious, because now you get to see, this guy imagining a 100-foot tall starfish as his mom, basically, which is, you know, stuff like that. I think he handles super well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else to say about the plot. I don't want to spoil a ton of the plot. It's pretty straightforward. They go on a mission to a research facility, and
I think we probably spoiled the most spoilable part already.
probably,
But
yeah,
it's only the first 10 minutes.
we'll just say chaos ensues.
Hilarity and chaos.
Hilarity
and blood.
and violence and chaos and blood and gore. And you get to see we talked on a recent episode. I don't know if it was the last episode or the one before that. We talked about the promise of the premise, right? We talked about fun and games and script writing. This delivers on that.
Oh yes.
You want to
Yes,
see
it does.
you want to see a shark man biting heads off? Boy howdy. You get to see
We
a shark
got it.
man. You got it. You got it. You want to see a polka dot man flinging interdimensional acid at people? You got it. You got it.
You want to see Idris Elba use small bullets?
He'll use the smallest of bullets.
You can't even see
The
it.
small-
Can't even
Smallest.
see those bullets. No, I mean all of that really, really works. I also think that there are things that for me, it's craft stuff for me, but like defining how to write a good screenplay, and a lot of that is setting up things that you need earlier in the movie. So you're not just surprising everybody with a deus ex machina or some ending where people pull out skills that haven't been demonstrated or pull out equipment that they never established that they had just so that they can solve the final problem. But this movie not only has pretty much none of those problems, as far as I can tell. They do a really good job of establishing what every character is capable of, what their strengths and weaknesses are, limitations are, and then using those at the end of the film. But also there's stuff like Flula Borg's character, who's part of the first team, is a character called Javelin, and he, in his, sorry again, spoilers here, but with his dying breath, he bestows his magic.
Is it magic?
It's some kind of magic. It's like an interstellar space javelin. I don't know, maybe magic, but alien technology. He's an alien character. Anyway, it's a fancy javelin that does fancy stuff that I don't even know what all of its powers are. But he bestows this on Harley Quinn. She spends a good chunk of the rest of the movie because because she's insane and dumb. She's weird. Calling her dumb is probably the wrong word. She's just a lunatic.
Yes. It's crazy.
So he dies before he can fully express what she should do with the javelin, and it just eats at her the rest of the movie. Like she ends up carrying around this javelin, but also going, I have no idea what I have this for. But he told me to carry it, so I'm carrying it, which is a very Harley Quinn thing to do. and then it pays off. Her javelin, it's James Gunn's sort of Chekhov's gun moment where we've established a javelin several times. Didn't have a lot to do most of the movie, and then it did. So,
yeah,
craft matters. And I feel like also maybe another lesson for this for me is like, if you're a movie studio, if you hire a guy like Gunn, let him do the thing. Just let him do the thing, and he'll do a pretty good job. Don't screw it up. But this movie does have a theme in it, I would say, or a couple themes in it that I feel like we should talk at some length about. One, the most obvious one is, sort of the big turn on American foreign policy and how, people like Amanda Waller are ruthless and evil and will use this idea, and this is maybe the other large piece of this, is this idea that the ends justify the means in order to pretty much justify whatever horrible thing that they want to do. And oftentimes they'll do it in foreign countries. They'll do it to other people. And I think Peacemaker obviously is an embodiment of this idea. Amanda Waller's an embodiment of this idea. But I think what is tricky, and I think what's dangerous sometimes, is people think that this kind of thing only exists in the comics. And I guess we should probably talk about how it doesn't. I mean, I'm gonna do an out of frame. Just spoilers for meta spoilers here. I am actually going to do an out of frame episode on this point, so you guys will see this maybe more fleshed out. But the that ends justify the means idea is like found all over the world. Every tyrannical government, but also governments we think of as not being tyrannical, do this constantly. And I mean, we just lived through a year and a half of the ends justify the means as well. Or if you're in Australia or New Zealand,
Still living it
in a really aggressive way. So I don't know. I mean, I figured we should talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, they definitely. It's pretty upfront about what this movie is really about, which is U.S. government is I wouldn't say a bad guy, but
Waller in particular
could be used to become a bad influence.
Yeah.
And the only reason is for saving face.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no other reason that this is happening other than just to save face for the U.S. government.
Well, and it's interesting that the team, which is entirely comprised of hardened criminals, is even lied to. Like, they're not even told the truth about their mission,
mm-hmm.
which sort of indicates that even Waller understands that, like, this is what she is doing is so wrong that even some of the worst people
right
in her prison wouldn't want to take part in it. I mean, and that's not that uncommon, really. I mean, there are these kinds of things that happen that get, usually fairly ineffectively covered up, but a lot of times they do get covered up for a number of years and then stuff gets declassified. I mean, you can go back and look at the kind of the horror stories of the Nazis or of the Soviets or, things like that, where you see, people doing experiments on twins and trying to sew live human beings together to create conjoint. I mean, there are just terrifying, what I can only really describe as mad science experiments that, like, we only kind of know about now because, like, World War II ended, a lot of that documentation fell into the hands of Americans, but which the Nazis weren't, like, it wasn't like a secret to them.
No.
Really. It wasn't like they were like, we're running these really important experiments on trying to freeze people to death to see how long they can survive the cold or whatever. It's just like, oh, yeah, we're just doing that. So that's pretty wild to me. Like, and to see that, but then, it's weird because it makes you feel like a conspiracy theorist, because then you get into things like the absolutely declassified MK program, which we know about, where the CIA researched torture devices and researched different ways to interrogate people and figure out how to drive people insane and stuff. So it's like, we're not doing that. I mean, there's a lot of the same problems, and I guess for me, the lesson is always, how much do you want to trust the state to to be the one to make moral choices, right? Because for me, it's kind of negative, actually. I not only have zero trust, I have a lot of faith that they're going to do the wrong thing in an awful lot of situations. So, I don't know. Jen, thoughts?
Well,
you probably have a lot of thoughts.
The thing of it is that governments don't have morality. Individuals have morality. And individuals do weird things when they get a hold of power. This goes back to Lord Acton, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so you have people with basically unrestricted power here. The ability and the resources to do pretty much anything that they want to do at any time. And you cannot assume that they're going to do the good and moral thing, because they almost never do. Like, that's just not a thing that happens because of the nature of power. And every single time they make an excuse for themselves. Every single time they say, well, it's for a good cause. You know, we're trying to stop this, or we're trying to prevent that. And every single time the justification becomes more and more flimsy. And so now they're doing it just because it's the easier way. It's the faster way because they feel like it.
Yeah.
Instead of having a good moral end that they are pursuing, the end is no longer the end. The means have become the end. And that is what happens when you let yourself believe that.
I think you really hit on something important to me in all of this, which is that a lot of it is maybe starts with expedience, right? Like if you view other human beings as totally expendable, right? And you think of people as that you can do anything you want, you can hurt or kill or do whatever you want to do to other human beings in the pursuit of your goals. The thing that becomes obvious very, very quickly is that, like, it's easy to do, right? Like if you want to, like, you want some land over here because you want to build a new military base over here. Well, okay, just kill everybody who's there or kick them out or do whatever. It's easier than negotiating with those people, buying something from them, trying to exchange, trying to trade with them, trying to, persuade. Persuasion is hard, right? I think this is why you also see a lot of people right now with vaccine mandates and things like that, where you go, well, why can't we just round everybody up and force them to do this? Because that's easier, right? Like the argument is literally that, like, I'm struggling to persuade people to do this thing that I want them to do. So to heck with it. I don't care about persuasion anymore. Let's just make them do it. Throw them in jail, whatever, round them up, do the thing. It's super easy to do that. But once you've gone down that road, there's, like, especially with governments in a lot of cases, there's no real limiting principle on what you could do that for. So you go, like, hey, I had to build this road, so I had to take your house. Okay, well, that's not great. Well, Pfizer wanted me to help them build a new factory, so I got to take your house, right? Like suddenly you start to see the slippage of this stuff. You're like, oh, okay. Well, at first it was like, well, we've got a public need that we've got to really do something with, and then suddenly it's like, well, my buddy wanted me to do it. And then it's like, well, I wanted to do it. So, who cares? I'll just, displace you. And it's fine, right? I think in Suicide Squad, there's a great... it's one of my favorite scenes, honestly, was and I don't know how much I want to reveal of this, but Harley ends up being the captive, I guess,
yep.
of the new Presidente Luna, Silvio Luna, who had just achieved, basically he won the presidency via military coup, which is what sort of sparks all this in the first place. It puts the stuff that's happening at the research facility at risk. And he tells this story about how there are all these rumors about some horrifying thing happening at this research facility where the former regime would send, dissidents or anybody, they would send the people that they didn't like there and they would never return. And then Harley's like, oh, well, it's good that you're in charge of it now. You can stop this from happening. And he's like, oh, no. No. Now my enemies will be afraid. Now my enemies will cower in fear, because if they say anything against my regime, their families, their children, everybody that they ever cared about and loved, I'm going to send them to this. You're like, yeah, that guy got that power so he could do that. Like that was kind of the big selling point for him of achieving that power. And I do also think it's funny in that movie too, where we kind of gloss over the fact that, like, at the end, we get a little news clip of the freedom fighters, the resistance fighters or whatever. And the leader of the resistance fighters, a woman named Sol Soria. And she's like, oh, for the first time, we're going to have democratic elections. And my cynical self goes like, we'll see about that.
Right.
like I think we've seen this play out enough times in history to know that maybe it's I applaud your intentions, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. And that scene that you were talking about, Sean, is also a great example of why it's a bad idea to give any government any extraneous power at all. Because a lot of people like to think that, oh, if we just had the right person in charge, it'd all be okay. Nope.
Yep. Nope.
They've got the hammer now. Everything's starting to look a lot like nails.
It's still a hammer, and it's still easy. It's still expedient for him to use that hammer. Yeah. I mean, it's just there's a lot there that, like, this movie, for as ridiculous as it is in a lot of ways, like I kind of appreciate that in the end it has a clear theme and it's about something. And by the way, another thing that I gotta say that I'm happy with this movie is I don't think we've talked a lot on this show about filmmakers, writers, etc., confusing good guys and bad guys. I don't think this movie does that.
Nope.
I don't think this movie has any problem identifying the fact that everybody in the story is not good, and it doesn't make excuses for the characters. I mean, the closest you get is sort of Ratcatcher too, who really it's not really a bad person to begin with. I don't even know why she's in prison, to be honest. I think she stole something.
Robbed a bank.
She robbed a bank.
Right.
Yeah. So on the scale of robbed a bank to robbed a bank with rats, by the way, with rats, not with guns or anything, but like
they charged her with a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
Assault with a deadly weapon.
Assault with a deadly weapon because of the rats, which is funny. That compared with assassins and like serial killers and Polka Dot Man has the same problem where he's just like a horrible, probably murdered his mom. I'd be willing to bet. I don't think they ever actually say why he was in prison, but I'm going to go
No, they don't, but I think that's safe money.
I'm going to go with murdered mom in that case.
And probably a lot of other people just on accident.
Possibly. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, at no point does this movie go, oh, these are the real heroes. These are the real moral victors. Nope. They're all not good. Not good. Anyway, let's wrap this up here. I'm going to tease this. I normally, we do a Q&A for our Patreon bonus section. So if you're a subscriber on Patreon or Subscribestar, which you can see on your screen if you're watching, or it's patreon.com/outofframeshow or subscribestar.com/outofframeshow. If you're a supporter of the show on either of those platforms, stick around and we're going to talk about the way that all this connects to the news about the Taliban taking Afghanistan, retaking Afghanistan after almost 20 years of the U.S. military being in that country. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I think it ties well into our discussion about the Suicide Squad in a lot of ways, because not only does it talk about people, trying to take control of power when there is any kind of power vacuum, but also just the idea of ends versus means, and even the U.S. government making an argument in favor of a war that was supposed to have this not happen. Like, that was really the whole claim, was that we would go in, depose the Taliban, set up some kind of a democracy, and then be able to exit. And we've now gotten a very painful 20-year lesson in that not working. So I'm pretty interested in that conversation. And if you are too, join us on Patreon or Subscribestar and subscribe and check it out. We've got more stuff like this every week. So for everybody else, and please make sure you subscribe to Out of Frame on YouTube and to TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. We'll see you next time.